Hi, and welcome to the sixth and sadly the final session of our Growing Healthy Volunteer Culture course. I hope you've really enjoyed it so far, and today is where we wrap things up and then make some plans for the future. And today we're looking at the final piece of the jigsaw for me, really, which is about leading for multiplication. It's how to grow volunteer leaders who lead others. And if you like, I'm often looking back at Jesus's model of ministry, and there were times when I look at his ministry and think, well, I'd have done things a bit differently. I'd have certainly gone and would have preached to larger numbers. I'd have filled some stadiums out, or some, I don't know, some amphitheaters out, whatever they had in that day. But Jesus was very particular about spending particular time with small numbers of people. Some talk about his 12. And his 72, if you like. So the 12 disciples, 3 of which he spent more time with. And then he also had a wider group, it seems, that he sent out on mission, for example, in Luke 9 and 10. That's probably a topic for another day, but I want to really encourage you to think about who your 3, your 12, and your 70 are. I'm very particular about thinking about that, about how I invest my time in certain people, not as favorites, but just as a way of doing that life on life ministry. And if you go back and you see for all the sessions that we've done so far, hopefully this will all make sense, because we're looking for people who will catch the vision. We're looking for the people who are the right people for the right seats on that bus, who are growing and who can begin to lead others. And if you like, the real goal that we're aiming for is leader volunteers. These are volunteers who can lead others. And as they lead others, they multiply the ministry. And I think my challenge with volunteer ministry, and I know many others who find the same, is that is trying not to lead too many people. Okay, so it can be easy to think, well, I've got all of these people and I'm responsible for all of them. They all report to me. I'm the one who has to check up on all of these people. And that may be the case for some of you. You may have 10, you may have 20, you may even have 50 people who in some way, shape or form are linking to you. And it's just too many. It's just too many. It's not the way Jesus did his ministry, let alone the way that we should. So I'm always looking for leader volunteers. And I want to replicate something in them, not to make them mini me's, if you like, but I want them to catch the heart and the value of what we're doing and who we want to be. And there's no shortcut to that. You can't just run extra programs, webinars, courses to develop that in people. Instead, it's actually day to day. It's the way I speak with people. It's perhaps remembering their birthdays. It's sharing scripture with them. It's the way I want to help them grow in their gifts that speaks to how I want to invest in them to multiply what we're doing, to multiply the heart of what we're doing through our ministry. And so in this session, I want you to come prepared with some, I guess, with the principles and tools that you use to develop leaders who in turn develop others, is what I call leading for multiplication. And you may not have called it something like that before. You may not have called it multiplication or anything like that, but I'd love you just to share what works for you. What is it that's worked for you in your ministry? I'm sure there are things that you can share with us. But how do we find people like this? And the first thing I want to say and reassure you, if you're thinking, I don't know many people like this, and I'll tell you this, I don't either. These people are quite few and far between. And again, just to emphasize, they're not extra special, okay? They're not more valuable in God's sight, but they bring a certain skill set, I suppose, a certain way of thinking about leadership, which when found and channeled can really help to grow what we're doing. And I've got a couple of models that I'm just going to show you. I'm not going to pause on these for too long, because I'm not saying let's replicate this model, okay? But there's a couple of models which talk about levels of leadership. So Jim Collins in his book Good to Great talks about level 4, level 5 leadership. John Maxwell in his book The 5 Levels of Leadership speaks about this, and I've got the screen up here where you can see these levels of leadership. So level 1 is a position-based leadership. You're a leader and people follow you because they have to. Yeah, and usually that's in paid ministry. You know, well, you're the boss, so I have to follow you, right? And that happens on the wards. So people, might follow me on a ward round because, well, that's what they're there to do. And if they don't, I will have a word with them. So that's a position-based leadership. Permission-based leadership, level 2, is people follow you because they want to. All right, they want to, they're warm to you. They have a sense that, you know, I want to kind of come and be on your team. Level 3, he talks about production. People follow you because of what you've done for that organization, what you've produced, the thing, you know, your track record. They think, here's somebody I want to latch onto. They're doing good things. I'm going to follow them. Level 4 is kind of getting more towards what we're talking about here, people development. It's where people follow you because of what you've done for them personally. They'll follow you because you've developed them, you've invested in them. They feel they've got an affinity with you, and they want to almost pay you back for the faith that you've shown them, and so on. So that's sort of the reproduction. And then the pinnacle, he talks about level 5, is people follow you because of who you are and what you represent. And at this level is where you sort of develop, you develop new leaders who can in turn develop others. They've got that insight. They understand it's more than what you've done for them, more than what you've done for the organization. It's about how you're leading. And John Maxwell estimates that only 1% of leaders make it to this level. And I must say, that does ring true in my experience. I think a lot of people are not at that level, and that's okay. We'll come to that in a minute. But let me tell you, when we're leading volunteers, we have to be leading from level 2 and above. Okay, so the minimum we're looking to lead is level 2 and above, because by definition, level 1 doesn't exist in volunteer ministry. People will follow you perhaps because they want to, or because of what they see that you're doing. But we want people to be aligned beyond that. Do you see where we're getting to? We're saying we want people to be aligned beyond what we've done for the organization, even what we've done for them. But actually, we want them to be aligned with that heart and that vision. So already from our first session, we're looking for people like this. And we have to be patient and recognize that we're not just going to find lots of people at that level, but we actually want to be moving people towards that level of really understanding and grasping what we're doing. So that's John Maxwell's model. And as I say, there's many of these models out there. You know, there's some good things about them. There's some not so good things about some of them as well. The second one I want to look at is by Tony Morgan, who's works with sort of church development, leadership consultant. And I've slightly adapted his model. He works from level 2, sort of 2 to 5 on this. So I've just added a level 1. So here's just a couple of levels that he mentioned. So I've added in leading self. So you're leading one person. That's really important, isn't it? Leadership of ourselves, developing our mission, managing our time, and so on. So that's sort of the first level of leadership. The second level of leadership is leading by example. So this might be from your strengths through, you know, and actually having disciplines and sort of moving forwards, you know, always kind of making steps forward. And you do the action, and someone else says, I'm going to follow you because I've seen you step out there and do it. I've seen you make a decision in your ministry, and you've put something on the line, and I'm going to follow you and be like you. All right, lead by example. Level 3 is leading other people. So the competencies, and this is what's in the boxes below already, the competencies that he calls for these leadership levels. So these include things like, you know, setting clear expectations. We've talked about this, haven't we? Really important. Managing conflict, effective communication, building teams, discipling people. Okay, so this is rather than just plowing out like a level 2 leader and people follow you. This is deliberately starting to lead other people. We're starting to get warm now, aren't we? You know, this is what we've been looking at in our course. Level 4 is leads other leaders. Right, we're starting to get hot now. This is where we're going. Okay, measuring and evaluating results. How are we doing? Developing and mentoring leaders, stewarding people, time, and money, planning for the future. You're starting to get bigger picture. You're starting to think how we might develop this ministry, how we might put another layer in, how we need to develop our systems for recruitment, you see? So you're just getting more sophisticated there. And then level 5, leading through vision. This is leading through that big picture, and it relates a bit to Maxwell's level 5. You're sort of leading at that level of what you represent. You're developing a team, you're thinking about vision, you're leading change, you're shaping culture, you're thinking in that way. And that's really a lot of what we've been talking about in this course, isn't it? And I just want to bring out a couple of broad themes that I think that models like this help us with volunteer ministry. As I said, they're not perfect, but they can help us to understand a few things. Firstly, is that skills can be coached. So when we look around, we think, oh my goodness, I've got a lot of level 1 leaders, or people aren't on that scale. That's okay, because skills can be coached. And I want to encourage us to start with ourselves and to invest in our own leadership. And thinking, how can I move up those levels? How can I learn and grow in my leadership? So seek training for those things. And I hope that some of what we've done in these sessions has deliberately been to help us move on in our leadership journey. But we also need to recognize in other people that some may be well suited to leading at level 2. I've got a number of people who volunteer with us who are absolutely fantastic at leading a group. Okay, they're brilliant at doing their thing. So I might maybe right just to leave them there, but I've got other people I think, I know that you're able to lead 10 people, or I know that you've got the ability to lead 100 people. Let me help you to do that. And they're very different skills at different levels, and that's why it's so important for us to listen to people, to listen to their heart, listen to what makes them tick, what they're excited about. Are they excited about developing other people? Well, then help them to grow into that level of leadership. And some of the skills that we've seen mentioned on previous slides, I've just listed them here, that we might seek to deliberately go out and get some training and some equipping in these different areas. So that's one general principle. Another is that leading volunteers requires a higher level of leadership than leading paid staff. I'm not going to really expand too much on that, but I just want to assure you that if you're finding volunteer leadership difficult and challenging, you're not alone. I think on the one side, if you do it well, if you've got some volunteers who are really full of heart and vision, in some ways they're easier to line manage. Okay, they're easier to lead. But actually, oftentimes leading volunteers who are not paid, who can be distracted by other things, and aren't tied by a contract, can be difficult. I think we need to look for people who are at or have a potential to lead at a higher level. So I've said that very clearly, no one is better than someone else. It's quite clear that in fact, most of our leaders are at a certain level, and they may not move from there. As I said, most volunteers, we don't want lots of level 4, level 5 volunteers. We want them to lead at their level, but let's look for people who have the potential to lead at that higher level. Let's be deliberate about spotting them and praying them, not because they're better, because they will help us to multiply the ministry. And then very much related, just that reminder again, and I'm just saying it again and again and again, really, very few volunteer leaders will be at level 4 or level 5. Don't be discouraged, okay? Don't be discouraged. I've found very few at that level. Many I've found at levels 1 to 2, some at level 3. Very rarely that we get to level 4 or 5. But as I say, that's okay. We don't want lots of level 4, level 5 leaders. Can you imagine what a nightmare it would be if there were lots of me in my organization? Well, we wouldn't really get much done. We talk about leadership all the time. Most of my people I want out there leading groups and doing things, and using their skills and their gifts to do that. But we do need some people who can help to grow that, help to grow people, have that attitude of a level 4, a level 5 leader. And that's why we've gone through these principles that we've gone through already. And we talked about this in session 2. This was principle 6, multiplying through investment in a few. And we talked about getting the right people on the right bus. We said, don't just take anybody. And we're talking about our volunteer leader roles. You know, it's right to be looking for these particular skills and gifts they might have. Getting the wrong person in the wrong place has an impact on the ministry, on other people, on the volunteer themselves. And then focusing on finding leader volunteers. Let me just encourage you to be praying for that. Again, not because they're better, not because they're more valuable in God's sight, but because they do bring something to our ministry that helps us to multiply. How do we focus on developing volunteer leaders? I hear you say, well, look, we've already been going through it. We've been talking about this whole time. The heart of a volunteer. Do they demonstrate a willing, sacrificial heart? It goes back to character. It goes back to getting to know people before we get into ministry with them. It talks about the habits. We've talked about those key ingredients. We've just mentioned ingredient number 6 just then. Leading with vision. Your leader volunteers may not be the early adopters. I've got a fantastic leader volunteer, and he has taken about 8 months from the first time we talked about it to say yes. But his yes is a yes, and he's a brilliant leader volunteer. I want to also choose with care. Okay, session 4, how do we get the right people in the right places? That's why we do applications and interviews. We do it with care to get to know where people are at, to know whether they've got the potential to lead at a higher level, to know whether they want to, and whether they're getting that opportunity already. So when I'm interviewing and thinking about team leaders, I'm thinking about these priorities that I want for team leaders. And I talk with potential team leaders and I say, a big priority for you is that you are a talent spotter. You're there to look for people and to think, how can I help you to do the works that God's called you to do? You're here to be an enabler of others. You're here to keep the vision central. That's the key of a team leader. If you get too bogged down in what we're doing and you don't remind your team of that vision of the future, of what it might look like if we accomplished our mission, if you don't do that, you're soon just going to get bogged down, and people will forget why we're here. So those are the things that I remind team leaders of. That's what I'm looking for when we appoint team leaders in CMF. And then investing with diligence. This helps. As we invest in people, we see what they're interested in, what they're hungry for. And we need to invest, as we talked about in session 5, that quality time in our culture and our staff. And it means really investing in people personally. Yes, we can send people to a conference, yes, we can send them on a training course, but it does mean that kind of one-to-one investment. And then let me just add to that, really, give people something to do. If we spend too long and not give people something to do, they'll be off. Quality leaders won't stick around if there's not something compelling for them to get going with. So give people something to do early. And then also invest these principles in others. So for me in CMF, that means teaching this kind of stuff to other leaders within the organization. It's explaining what they're probably already doing, maybe naturally, some of these gifted leaders doing it naturally, trying to put it into words and explain what we're doing, investing these principles in other people. So how do we focus on developing volunteer leaders? Well, I'm hoping that we've seen some of these things come through over our 6 weeks together. Putting them into practice is another thing altogether, of course, and I'll be hoping and praying that that will be possible in your context. Before we finish and be a bit shorter today, I want to just wrap up with 4 formal arenas in which I develop leader volunteers. Okay, so these are formal processes, I suppose, or structures that we use in CMF where I want to see people develop. And I'm just going to mention these 4. The first is built-in reviews. And we've talked about this before, how we normalize a culture where we say, we're going to have this role, it's got a time limit. We're going to have a mutual review. Is it still working for you? Is it still working for CMF? No one feels picked on. It's not, we're saying one person needs to be reviewed and the other ones don't. This is just what we do. And we have specific questions that we ask. And so I have every couple of months, I seek to really touch base and have a good chat with my team leaders, often more than that, but I will certainly ask them these questions. And I find these helpful. What are you celebrating? What are you wrestling with? Or you might say, what's a challenge for you at the moment? And how can I pray for you? And I find those are 3 questions that really unlock good discussions with my team. I then have an annual review, and in the Dropbox folder there's a form that I use for that. You can see what we do, and I'm sure there's better ways of doing it, but that's just what I've chosen to use. I won't read through these questions on the screen. You can pause the screen to look at those. But those are some of the questions that I ask, sometimes throughout the year as well, but more formally at the end of the year. And of course, my hope is that as I have these principles in place, I've given some templates for how they might do this with their teams. So I'm treating them as leader volunteers. I'm saying to them, I want to invest in you. This is how we're doing things. And actually, I want you to do this with your team. I want you to have the same kind of expectations. The same time limited roles, the same kind of reviews, It won't be as intensive or as detailed as the team leader review. It'll be appropriate to their role, perhaps to their level of leadership, but I want that culture to kind of trickle through. So that's reviews. A second area is what I call leadership clusters. And again, I want to model what I think these look like so that then my team leaders and others in CMF then can replicate this kind of thing. And we're seeing this happen. So we're seeing this happen with a number of our teams are now running these role-specific clusters. So students or juniors or evangelism, global ministries, prayer, pastoral care, and they're beginning to run these clusters where they get together and meet and have some training. And the way I define a cluster is when you bring together the 3 or 8 leaders you're coaching. Clusters is usually in a coaching setting, but I'm using that terminology in our setting. So you bring them together for a time where you touch base and you spend some time together. So I do this once a month with my team leaders. I also get together once a month with my field team at CMF in a similar way. I don't always call them clusters, but that's how the terminology that I use to help me think about things. Some ministries are very formal and they have names for things and they're called clusters or huddles and that sort of thing. Maybe it's because I'm British, but I don't sort of label everything overtly before people, but that will depend on culture and of your organization and perhaps of your country as well. What's an effective cluster? What are we trying to do with these leaders as we seek to develop volunteer leaders? Well, firstly, it just brings us together. And the joy, you know what, I had one just last night, actually, we had one of these, the joy of just seeing my leaders in the room, although it was virtual last night, but just seeing them in the room together. And I don't have to do much. They just start to share, they start to encourage each other, pray for each other. And I've just basically put them together in the room. Really, really important. So it brings them together. Secondly, reminding them of the vision. I always take every opportunity to repeat, why are we here? We all need to hear it, don't we? We all need to hear the gospel again and again. You know, we need reminding of these truths. So take that opportunity to remind people of why we're here. Tell a story. Get them to tell stories. Let's think about the future. And then thirdly, plans, course adjustments to keep winning. Okay, so winning is basically to keep succeeding, to keep seeing things move forward. What is it we need to tweak? How can we do things better? Last night we were talking about the use of computer systems to do things better. You know, it was a little bit boring in some ways, the discussion, but actually it was about just tweaking some things so we could keep doing things effectively and practically on the ground. So those are some of the things I think about with an effective cluster. What about preparation? So I'm thinking, as the leader of this cluster, in advance, I'm thinking these 4 things before, you know, what do I hope that they think and feel and know at the end of the cluster? So last night we were talking about systems. I wanted them to know that we're serious as an organization about developing effective systems for communication. I wanted them to feel encouraged that we're listening to their needs, their challenges with our system. I wanted to bring one of our IT workers in to listen. And I wanted them also to know something. I wanted them to go away understanding the system better. Okay, so that was one of my goals of our cluster. I won't read out the rest. You can pause and see what they do. One thing I do tend to do is think, is number 3 there, what do I want to do before? So I would try and prepare people, like principles of any good meeting. Have people to prepare and to think beforehand. I don't want to overburden them. Most of my volunteer leaders are busy medics, families, all sorts of things going on. So I don't give them loads to do, but I will often pose a question or maybe send them a brief article for them to consider during that time. So that's my preparation as the leader of my cluster for how I'm going to meet with my leaders. And then during the cluster, you'll recognize some of these questions from my reviews. I really just frame it with this. I put it in the Zoom chat at the moment and I send them off to their rooms and I say, what are you celebrating? What are your challenges? How can we pray for you? Are there any other specifics that have come up during this meeting that we need to address now or in the future? And then we might have a section to dream about the future. So we might just sort of have a little bit of time to say, what is it that we want to see in the future? What are we missing? And so on. So that's my basic agenda for that time with those people. Some topics that we've covered in the training section, because we do some training within this time, I've just put them again on the list. Last night it was about using our database. So not the most exciting in the world. I much prefer things like strategic leadership or Johari triangle or personality. I love all that stuff. but we also need to do some of the less exciting things as well. So those are some of the things I've done with clusters. So I've talked about annual review, I've talked about clusters as spaces. Thirdly, and very briefly, specific external training. I and CMF cannot sort of train our guys in everything. I don't know most things about leadership. I'm aware that we need external input. So I try and arrange for some of our guys to go to the European, I offer them to go to the European Leadership Forum. It's not a 3-line whip, as in they have to go, but I offer them to go. We've got the ICMDA training resources. There's various training things happening in ICMDA that many of you will be aware of. We've got IFES, the International Fellowship of Evangelical Students, do some great training sessions, conferences, and so on. I've just been on some coaching training along with some others in ICMDA. Lots of other things that we can look at both online and in person to invest in our leaders, and to sometimes just tap them on the shoulder and say, hey, that would be great for you to go to. How about it? Can I help? Try and raise some funding to help you go, for example. And then finally, what I call cross-pollination. So this is where we're looking to see our leaders start to work in other areas, but also people who have been developed in other areas come across. So our catalyst teams, which I've focused on in these times, are one area of our leadership development, are one area of our volunteers. I've got associates who are working in specific areas like mentoring, evangelism, and workplace ministry. People who have come on board for a year or 2 years to work with students. So we've got volunteers in other areas. I've also got volunteers helping us with a number of tracks that we're running. So I've listed those tracks there. So we've got track leaders. We've got people who have come through these training tracks, which are typically 12 to 18 months in duration, have been invested in, have been encouraged, have got something about CMF. And then from those tracks, they're often a pool of people who I might say, how about coming and being involved in a catalyst team in your region? Or how about coming on and working with CMF for a year as a volunteer, as an associate, for example? So I'm just beginning to look at how we cross-pollinate. Let's move people across to give them different opportunities and different roles where they may benefit other areas of CMF's ministry, and where they may benefit as well in their leadership journey in working with others. So I'm generally thinking, how do I develop my leader volunteers across, and just stepping back and saying, what's the big picture here? And where can they be involved? And of course, that's beyond CMF as well. It's church as well. It's recognizing where people are leading. So those are just some of the ways that it could be done. Look, there's probably many others, and I really would love you to come with your ideas and with your experiences of how you are intentionally developing leaders, and to share those with the group. So some key takeaways for us: leading for multiplication is, if you like, the holy grail of volunteer leadership. It's both biblical, but it's also essential to its success, that we don't just stick with addition, but we're also looking to multiply through other people who will then lead other groups of volunteers. I think volunteer ministry necessitates a higher level of leadership, although I am biased, but we need to grow in our learning in this area before we teach others. That's what we've been doing here, isn't it, in this course together. Remember, very few of our volunteers will be leader volunteers. Don't be discouraged by that, but do look to find them, pray for them, invest in them. That's a good thing for us to do. And just that exaltation, we must focus our efforts on a few if we're to see multiplying growth. That means a highly relational form of leadership, as well as using some of these formal methods, some of which I've just mentioned at the end. So some questions for our session, our final session together. Again, pause, have a look at those. Please do come prepared to answer those in our session together. And if you'd like more, I just want to really encourage you to consider attending the Neural Associates High Impact Volunteering course. They have some online offerings. They also do, when things restart, some face-to-face offerings. If you'd like to know more about those, please do contact me. I just want to acknowledge and give thanks to God for the work of Neural Associates. They really triggered a lot of my thinking in this area and helped me just to understand things. Some of the things I'd already been doing or trying to do unsuccessfully, and helped me to understand. So there is so much more that we could do. This has been very much a taster course, and I thoroughly recommend you doing some more training. And they're a brilliant, godly group of people doing that. So email me at volunteer@cmf.org.uk if you'd like to know more about what they're doing. So that's it. That's the end of our 6 weeks. It's been fantastic to be with you. Look forward to sharing with you in our final session. May God bless you as you seek to develop healthy volunteer cultures, as you seek to grow volunteers, and see your ministry extended for the glory of God. Amen.